In this video, we are going to explore the Properties panel as well as how to create reusable components in the Sketch.io platform. Just like the Design panel, the Properties panel affects the selected element. So to configure an element, you first need to select it. Once the element is selected, depending on the type of element, different properties will be displayed. For example, for the link element, you have the text content of the element, the URL it points to, and whether to open the link in a new tab or a new window. In addition to that, there's also other properties such as the render conditionally property. This property allows you to display the element only when a condition is respected. Let's go to the product page to see an example of that. Here, the compare at price element is rendered conditionally to only be visible when a given variable is true. In this case, it's only visible when the product.compareAtPrice Shopify variable is defined. In other words, if the product doesn't have a compareAtPrice value, the element will not be rendered and will only have the regular price element. And then we have the loop variable product. And when set to yes, you have two fields you need to fill. The first one is the data array variable. This is the array we want to loop through when rendering this element. And we have the loop variable. This variable will be set to the array element we're at while looping through the data array variable. Let's see an example of that. Let's go to the collection page. Here we have the products grid. If we select a grid element, you can see that the loop variable property is set to yes, and that it loops through the collection.products array and sets the product variable at each iteration. Here, the collection.products variable contains the list of products in this collection. You can visit shopify.dev for a complete reference of the liquid variables that are set in the Shopify online store. We also see that some elements can also have the element tag property. Setting element tags allows you to easily find the element in the page when you use the visual programming tool. But more on that in a future tutorial video. We then have the attach data property. Here we can attach data entries to the element, which can be useful once again when you use the visual programming tool. Finally, there is the element ID property that sets the ID attribute of the element. Alright, now let's take a look at the reusable component feature that Sketch.io provides. So when you create pages with Sketch.io, you will often find yourself creating the same elements over and over again in multiple pages of your project. A good example of that is the header and footer sections of the page. These are elements that you'll have to add to almost all pages of your store, and it would be very time consuming to do it from scratch every single time. The solution is to turn those sections into reusable components. A reusable component can be dragged and dropped in any page of your store, and if you modify it somewhere, the changes will apply to all its instances in the project. Let's see an example. Let's create a section in the homepage where we can display different collections of our shops. If you want to turn this element into a reusable component, you can simply go to the Navigator panel and click on this little icon. We give a name to the component and voila, the component is now available in the Components tab of the Add panel. You can drag it to the page like this if you want to reuse it. As we said, if you modify an instance of the component, it will apply to all its instances in the project. To modify a component, you first need to double click on it like this and modify it. And here you can see that the other instance of the component got updated as well. Let's push this even further now. For this kind of components, we would like to replicate the collection block, but it would be nice to be able to customize the text, URL and image while keeping the reusability of the component. To achieve that, you need to go to the desired component property and click on the little dot next to it. You can then link that property to either a dynamic variable or expose it as a component property. Let's do that for our properties. Note that some styling properties also allow being linked to variables or exposed as component properties. For that, you must be in the selected element selector mode. It won't work if you use the type or class selectors. Perfect, so now we have exposed those properties to our component, and now you can see that you can customize them outside the component like this. The benefit now is that if you modify the component, once again it will apply to all its instances while keeping the customizations. So let's put the title above the image, just like this. That is it for this tutorial. We have seen how to configure different properties of elements, but also how to make elements reusable via components. And finally, how to expose some component properties for even more customizability. In the next tutorial, we will explore the Actions tab to create interactive online stores.